Good morning, boys and girls. Today we will discuss the treatment of psychosis. So, before going into the drug treatment of psychosis, which also includes a specific case called schizophrenia, we'll let us discuss a little bit about the concept of the antipsychotic drugs. Earlier, these antipsychotic drugs or the drugs used in psychosis were termed as major tranquilizers. So, this term has now been discarded as it created confusion with another loose term, minor tranquilizers, which is basically a misnomer for anxiolytic and sedative. So, this term also has been abandoned, and the present usage in USA tends to favor the term antipsychotic drugs. Rather, in many of the Indian psychiatry books or the psychiatrists, they used to term all these drugs as psychotropic medications. So, the antipsychotic drugs are broadly defined as the drugs which are effective in the treatment of schizophrenia and other agitated states. The term is broader and descriptive, but is not befitting as all types of psychosis do not respond to this category of drugs. The term neuroleptics incorporates those drugs which produce both antipsychotic and extrapyramidal symptoms at the same dose level. So, you may get a question on neuroleptics. A neuroleptic means the drugs which will produce both antipsychotic and extrapyramidal symptoms at the same dose level. However, after the emergence of newer drugs like clozapine and its congeners, it has been established that the antipsychotic action and the extrapyramidal effects are not linked to one another. And after this, the newer drugs which are having potent antipsychotic actions with negligible and extrapyramidal side effects are labeled as atypical neuroleptics. So, again, to call them, you can call them antipsychotic, you can call them psychotropic, you can call them neuroleptic, or even sometimes loosely you can call them antischizophrenics. But it has too limiting, as other type of psychosis may also respond to these drugs. So, what is psychosis? Psychosis is a thought disorder characterized by disturbances of reality and perception, and impaired cognitive function, and inappropriate or diminished affect or mood. We used to call that in case of psychotic disorder, your insight is lost, which actually remains absolutely okay in case of any kind of mood disorder or depression like disorders. So, loss of insight is one of the characteristic feature of any kind of psychosis. Schizophrenia is a particular kind of psychosis which is characterized mainly by a clear sensorium but a marked thinking disturbance. And you will be surprised to hear that in case of schizophrenia, the intelligence level of that person remains absolutely normal. And therein lies a big problem. I mean, in certain types of schizophrenia, it's very difficult to diagnose a case as the person is so intelligent that it's difficult for a clinician to categorize it as a disease or to understand whether the patient is actually telling the truth. As I said, we are actually discussing different drugs which are used in psychosis or psychotic disorders. But there are certain drugs which may be responsible for producing psychosis. So those drugs are called psychosis producing drugs, and they have definitely uh, opposite action to that of the drugs which are termed as psychotropic medications or antipsychotic drugs. So these drugs which are being mentioned below, levodopa, which is basically a inactive form of dopamine, the CNS stimulants like cocaine, amphetamine, and those which are basically stimulating central nervous system, and the drug like phencyclidine, apomorphine, they may be responsible in certain times to produce psychosis. But these are basically drug induced psychosis. So if you can stop the medications and give some kind of intervention, most of the times these things are curable. But many of the psychotic problems like schizophrenia probably have no solutions and require drug treatment or therapy for lifetime. In case of schizophrenia, which is a particular type of psychotic disorder, pathogenesis is usually unknown. It was occurred in the late teens, early 20s. Genetic predisposition in the familial incidence is quite common, and we are actually seeing in twins, both of them are probably, if one is having schizophrenia, the other one is also having that. The multiple genes are involved. It affects 1% of the population worldwide, and it may or may not be present with anatomical changes. So in case of schizophrenia, if you are going for CT scan, brain scan, it's very difficult, or even a MRI, you may not see any significant changes in the brain, which actually is seen in case of Alzheimer's disease or in case of brain atrophy in elderly people, in case of dementia, obviously in case of different types of stroke. But here it's very difficult sometimes to get any kind of changes. So from there, just by seeing the or following the evidence-based medicine or getting the information from diagnosis is very difficult. Diagnostic procedure is very difficult to pinpoint a case of schizophrenia. Mostly it has been done clinically. It's a thought disorder. The disorder is characterized by a divergence from reality in the mind of the person. As I said, it's a psychosis. It is characterized mostly by visual and auditory hallucinations, delusions, intense suspicions, feeling of persecution, or sometimes control by external forces, which is called paranoia, or delusion of persecution, depersonalization, loss of insight, which is the most important thing, and there is attachment of excessive personal significance to daily events, which called ideas of reference. But there are many great people which are probably having these kind of disease, and with that probably they were not being able to live absolutely normal life like the other people, but they were extremely creative. And like I can give one example of a painter, Van Gogh, who was having schizophrenia. So and many of you probably know one of his greatest paintings, Sunflower. So he was one of a example of a schizophrenic person, and at that time the drugs obviously were not available like right now. And there is another person, Dr. Nash, who was there's a film called Beautiful Mind on the schizophrenic person who got Nobel Prize and in economics. So it's not that the intelligence is lost. So even with schizophrenia you can carry on with your normal work, normal job, if the patient is taking medications on a regular basis. It has usually two kinds of symptoms, the positive and the negative. The positive symptoms are characterized by delusions, often paranoid in nature, illusions, auditory hallucinations, thought disorders with irrational conclusions, garbled sentences, and stereotyped or at times aggressive behavior. So these are all positive symptoms, whereas the negative symptoms include introvert behavior, poor socialization, emotional blunting, lack of motivation, cognitive deficits, lack of attention, loss of memory, and these symptoms are usually progressive and unfortunately non-responsive to medication. So that is one problem of the negative symptoms of schizophrenia. But as I said, there are some new drugs like clozapine which are given to take control of the situation and to combat those negative symptoms of schizophrenia. So there are different kinds of biological correlates which we may correlate with schizophrenia: genetic factors, the neurodevelopmental anomalies or abnormalities, and the environmental stressors. So these may produce, or these may be important precipitating factor in case of thought disorders, any kind of thought disorders or psychotic disorders, not only in case of schizophrenia. It is characterized by several structural and functional abnormalities in the brain, but every time it is not possible for you to get that diagnostic result with the help of a scan. But sometimes you will see enlarged cerebral ventricles, there will be atrophy of cortical layers, and maybe reduced volume of the basal ganglia. So all these are the characteristics of schizophrenia, but every time in each and every schizophrenic patient you shouldn't expect to get all these characteristics. So there are different theories of schizophrenia. One such theory or hypothesis is called dopamine hypothesis. But before that, I would like to tell you a little bit about genetic predisposition, which is commonly seen in case of schizophrenia. Pathogenesis is usually unknown, and in first degree relatives, in case of twins, monozygotic twins, the probability of the other being affected is almost 50%. In first degree relatives, it is around 10%. And despite evidence for genetic linkage, the result of molecular genetic studies in schizophrenia are inconclusive. So recently, at least one gene which encodes for neuroregulin 1 or neuroregulin I has been reported to be associated with schizophrenia, and the work has been going on in different developed countries as well as in India on this matter. Whereas the dopamine theory, which is probably the most important hypothesis in case of schizophrenia, says that many lines of evidence point to be aberrant increased activity of dopaminergic system as being critical in the symptomatology of schizophrenia. And it has been said that there is a greater occupancy of D2 receptors by dopamine, and which is basically greater than the greater dopaminergic stimulation. So circumstantial evidence presented are basically suggest that an excessive dopaminergic activity is responsible for this disorder, and this can be seen with PET, that means positron emission tomography scan has shown its increased dopamine receptor density in both the treated as well as untreated schizophrenics compared to normal scans of non-schizophrenic persons. Postmortem studies of the brains of schizophrenia or schizophrenics also reveal the presence of increased dopaminergic receptor densities. Now, the drugs that increase the central dopaminergic activity such as levodopa, amphetamine, apomorphine, as I said before, may aggravate schizophrenia, or those are the drugs which are responsible for causing different kinds of psychosis. Most antipsychotic drugs act by blocking postsynaptic dopamine receptor, that is D2 receptor in CNS, and especially there involving mesolimbic frontal system. We'll come to these different types of system later. And the levels of homovanillic acid HVA, a metabolite of DA, that means dopamine, in the CSF, plasma and urine increase during early phases of therapy, but decline after prolonged use of classical antipsychotic drug or psychotropic medications are also seen, and taken together the presented evidence strongly favors the hypothesis that dopamine abnormality is the basis for most of the manifestations of schizophrenia in patients without structural brain changes. However, in abnormal dopamine neurotransmitter function, which were totally responsible for the pathogenesis of schizophrenia, antipsychotic drugs could have provided absolute cure for schizophrenia rather than being partially effective for most or ineffective in some of the cases. The recent cloning and characterization of different dopamine receptors may permit more widespread acceptance of this hypothesis. If some selective D3 or D4 antagonists were available for trials, but these are not yet available. So, the typical antipsychotic drugs like haloperidol, like pimozide bind to D2 receptors more strongly than other dopamine receptors, where atypical neuroleptics like clozapine, olanzapine, they have little effect on dopamine receptors but bind more tightly with serotonin receptors like 5-HT2 or D4, or sometimes with alpha 1 and H1 receptors. The later drugs, that means the clozapines, they are not only possessing the greater efficacy, but it exhibit fewer side effects or adverse drug reactions. So, that is one of the advantage of those drugs over the classical drugs, and the extrapyramidal toxicity is more with the classical drugs, which is lesser with the newer drugs. So, now the areas which are associated with mood and thought processes are frontal cortex, amygdala, hippocampus, nucleus accumbens and limbic cortex. So, all these things are actually playing their role in modulating this mood and thought process of a person. All antipsychotic drugs act as antagonist of dopamine receptor. So, for you, just remember, though all those things are, areas are responsible for mood and thought processes, but ultimately they are the antagonist of dopamine 2 receptor, D2 receptor, and sometimes D3 and D4 receptor. And few of the newer drugs, they are acting on serotonin receptor, histamine receptor and alpha 1 receptors. Now, if you summarize, then we will ultimately come to few of the important dopaminergic projections or pathways in the brain. The one which is called the nigrostriatal pathway. This the spelling was not properly written. It is a striatal, STRIATL, nigrostriatal pathway, which projects from substantia nigra to caudate nucleus and putamen, and this controls voluntary movements via extrapyramidal system. And next comes the fourth one, that is the tuberofundibular pathway. This connects the arcuate nuclei and periventricular neurons to hypothalamus and posterior pituitary, and it controls prolactin release and other endocrinal consequences. The other two dopaminergic pathways are not defined in that fashion, but one of them is the mesolimbic, mesocortical, mesofrontal pathway, which projects substantia nigra to limbic system and controls behavior. And this part, this mesocortical, mesofrontal, mesolimbic path is basically, that means 2 and 3. These are probably overactive in case of schizophrenia. Other one which is not mentioned over here are medullary periventricular pathway, which projects from motor nucleus of vagus and may be involved in eating behavior. And lastly, the incerto-hypothalamic pathways, which connects medial zone incerta to hypothalamus and amygdala. It seems to control compilatory behavior in some animal species. So these are in brief about different pathways of dopamine system, and out of this for you the most important parts are mesolimbic, mesocortical, nigrostriatal pathway, and obviously you have to give a little bit of stress also on tuberoinfundibular pathway. But mesolimbic, mesocortical, mesofrontal pathway, which projects from substantia nigra to limbic system and controls behavior, as I said, it's being overactive in schizophrenia. Whereas in case of nigrostriatal pathway, which projects from substantia nigra to caudate nucleus and putamen, controls voluntary movements via extrapyramidal system. So you can understand these two are extremely important. Whereas tuberoinfundibular pathway is basically related to release of prolactin. So it is related to hypothalamus, posterior pituitary, and release of prolactin. So all these things will contribute in the development of a psychotic disorder. And here you will see that different pathways are being demonstrated. All these 4 pathways which are being mentioned earlier is being demonstrated over here, and here you see the different glands, pituitary glands, the cerebral cortex, all the things, and with the different colors all these pathways are being shown over here. So let us come back to our basic knowledge of autonomic nervous system and development of dopamine, which is happening, which is being taught while teaching adrenergic nervous system. So we know that the tyrosine, either it's a phenylalanine from where the tyrosine is synthesized, and then the tyrosine hydroxylase from where we'll get the DOPA, the dihydroxy phenylalanine, and from there you will get a dopamine, and dopamine is stored inside the vesicle. Sometimes it is converted to norepinephrine or noradrenaline, and from there ultimately it is converted to adrenaline. So this is the pathway, this is the way dopamine is synthesized. as these disorders, psychotic disorders, are primarily related to dopamine, though the other neurotransmitters like serotonin, like histamine, are also playing a little bit of, or rather key roles in the development of schizophrenia. In other words, you can say that the lot of research or lot of knowledge related to schizophrenia is still unknown. So, this is the way the dopamine is synthesized, and it is being ultimately stored in the vesicle. From there, the dopamine is so from there the dopamine is released, and this dopamine is binding with its receptor. It's probably D2 receptor. So more the dopamine is synthesized, more it will bind with the D2 receptor, more it will precipitate the symptoms of schizophrenia. Whereas the drugs, which are the classical drugs, mostly affecting the positive symptom, are the ones given in case of acute psychotic disorders, are mostly acting by blocking this binding of this dopamine with D2 receptors. So that is their primary function. And obviously, if they are doing so, one thing is quite understandable, that these drugs will decrease the relative concentration of dopamine, and hence as the receptors are blocked, obviously the dopamine concentration is going to be decreased relatively, and that's ultimately lead to a problem called Parkinsonism. So those classical psychotropic medications or antipsychotic medications may be responsible for the adverse drug reactions like Parkinson's disease or drug induced Parkinsonism. So these are the drugs which are helpful in the treatment of schizophrenia, may cause these kind of drug induced Parkinsonism like effect. The dopaminergic system, it has different dopamine receptors. These are at least 5 subtypes of receptors, D1 to D5, mostly involved in postsynaptic inhibition. And you just have to remember D2. If you try to remember as a group, then clump it as D2, D3 and D4. These are involved in both pre and postsynaptic inhibition. D2 is the predominant subtype, and this one is basically regulating the mood, emotional stability in the limbic system, the movement control in the basal ganglia. So these are two families. The first one in the right hand side is the D2 receptor family, and in the left hand side it is the D1 receptor family. Now you just see the schematic structure, and the second messengers are the similar, the cyclic AMP, but the D1 is acting via GS protein, whereas the other one is acting via GI, that means the inhibitory protein. The potassium currents are also there in the right hand side in the D2 receptor family, and you see the voltage gated calcium channels are also being down regulated in case of D2 receptor family, whereas in case of D1 receptor family, it was being acted by phosphatidyl inositol phosphate hydrolysis pathway. So now come to the right hand side, where you will see the clump of receptors, as I say, D2, D3, D4, and these are mostly responsible for the problems in schizophrenia. And the drugs which are being effective in case of the classical drugs are primarily blocking D2 receptors, whereas the distribution of D1 and D5 receptors are primarily in the stratum neocortex and D5s are in hippocampus, hypothalamus respectively, whereas D2 receptor is primarily located at substantia nigra, striatum and pituitary gland. So this is basically the second messenger pathway after binding with the dopamine receptor, how the G protein and the cyclic AMP mediated pathway is being active, being shown in this figure. So these are the receptors, and this is the way, as I said, the dopamine is released and the dopamine is binding with its receptor, and rest of the dopamine is going back to the system just like norepinephrine, and this is called the dopamine reuptake system, which is present in case of most of the adrenergic preparations which are produced endogenously, that means inside your body, and which is produced via physiological mechanism. If it is given from outside, from external sources, exogenously, probably the reuptake system is not that effective. So just to summarize the thing, you just see the dopamine receptor, how it is being coming inside. There is the presynaptic zone, there is a postsynaptic zone, there is a postsynaptic dopamine receptors. This dopamine is being synthesized over there. The same mechanism as it's a monoamine oxidase is acting on that. There is dopamine autoreceptor by which it may be, it is also controlling the release of dopamine, and once it is released, it may bind with the postsynaptic cells and the dopamine receptors. Both D2 and D1 receptors are there. D1 receptor is also present at the presynaptic level. Now, once it is binding with the D2 receptor or D2 receptor family like D2, D3, D4, we can see the action of dopamine, and this action is aggravated or potentiated in a disease like schizophrenia or any kind of thought disorders or psychotic disorders. So this part should be blocked by the classical antipsychotic or psychotropic medications. Now, when we are talking about treatment, we know that schizophrenia is for life, and there is no permanent remission. It's not that you will stop the medications and you are absolutely cured. The term no remission means we don't have any curative drug. The drugs we are using are actually used for suppressive purpose. So we'll suppress the symptoms, we'll suppress the most of the clinical features, and the patient may live a kind of normal life, but patient should be on medications. So different treatments are being devised. Initially it was the hydrotherapy which is being suggested, pouring of cold water in a stream from a height of at least 4 feet onto the forehead. It is one of the most certain means of subsiding violent maniacal excitement, and that we have ever been tried. It wrote an anonymous physician in the early 1800s. So you just think, at that time there was nothing available to treat these cases. In the time of Van Gogh, nothing was actually available. So that was the real problem. There was different antipsychotic drugs in the lobotomics, the 1940s. The first useful drugs were being invented, isolated. They are called phenothiazines, and they are used initially as a pre-anesthetic medication, but quickly they are being adopted by psychiatrists to calm down their mental patients. In the 1955, we have seen the invention of chlorpromazine, which was developed as an antihistaminic agent in the laboratory in France, but chlorpromazine is basically one of the drug which is used in case of schizophrenia till 20-30 years back as a primary drug. So, the treatments of the antipsychotics or the neuroleptics, the classical ones, are the drugs are currently used to prevent psychosis. They have also been termed neuroleptics as they suppress motor activity and emotional quotient of the patient. The schizophrenics must be treated with medications indefinitely in as much as the disease in lifelong, and it is preferable to prevent the psychotic episodes than to treat them. Although the antipsychotics and neuroleptics are drugs used mainly in the treatment of schizophrenia, they are also used in the treatment of other psychosis associated with depression and manic depressive illness, and the psychosis is basically associated with sometimes the Alzheimer's disease, and these conditions are lifelong and probably disabling for the patients. Why these antipsychotics or psychotropic or the neuroleptic drugs are probably failing? One of the major reasons is non-compliance, and probably many of the patients are not getting family support. So, these two things are extremely important while treating a case of schizophrenia or any kind of psychotic disorders. The classical drugs, the older drugs, there are major groups. The phenothiazines. The phenothiazines definitely have more activity on the D2 receptor as well as some activity on the alpha 1, and these activities are more than its action on the serotonergic receptors. The thioxanthines, where also you will see effect on both dopamine and the serotonergic receptor, and lesser activity on the D1 receptor. The butyrophenones, one of the classical example is haloperidol. Here you see the most of the activities on the D2 receptor or the predominant activity, and hence haloperidol is probably used in case of acute psychosis. So, that is the reason why it is being used in case of acute psychosis, as its activity on D2 receptor is probably the most among all these classical groups. The old antipsychotics, the neuroleptics, are basically D2 or dopamine receptor antagonists, though they have evidences that they can antagonize serotonergic receptor, norepinephrine receptor, histamine receptor, as well as acetylcholine, that means the different kinds of muscarinic receptors. It appears that the specific interaction of antipsychotic drugs with D2 receptors is important to their therapeutic action, and the affinities of most older classical agents for the D2 receptors correlate with their clinical potencies as antipsychotics. Now, here you see the correlation and between the therapeutic potency and affinity for binding D2 receptors. So, the haloperidol is probably having the one of the most potent drug, and among those drugs used in clinical practice, followed by thiothiazine group, and then the chlorpromazine group. In antipsychotic treatment, both D1 and D2 receptors are found in high concentrations in the striatum and also in the nucleus accumbens. Clozapine has a higher affinity for D4 receptor rather than D2, because clozapine is not the classical one, is an atypical neuroleptic or atypical antipsychotic drug, which is primarily effective in case of resistant cases of schizophrenia or in case of intractable schizophrenia. Recently, it has been found that most antipsychotic drugs may bind with the D3 receptor, which is basically clumping with D2 and D4 receptor, and hence they are non-selective. Now the antipsychotics and neuroleptics, as we all know that these drugs have their favorable action, hence they are also having adverse drug reactions. So antipsychotics may produce catalepsy, which will reduce motor activity, and this is happening due to blockage of dopamine receptors in basal ganglia. Antipsychotics will reverse hyperkinetic behavior, and this is happening due to blockage of dopamine receptors in the limbic region. Antipsychotics may prevent dopamine inhibition or prolactin release from pituitary, and the blockage of dopamine receptor in the pituitary region is responsible for this action, and this may lead to hyperprolactinemia. These classical drugs, these are absorbed but incompletely have due to high first-pass metabolism. Bioavailability is moderate. Most are highly lipid soluble, protein bound, and they are having slow elimination, so they can be stored in the body. The duration of action is longer than expected. Metabolites are present and relapse may occur. So weeks after discontinuation of the drug, you may see that this relapse, and it will start its action also once you prescribe this drug after a certain period of time. They are metabolized completely, and most of them are having active metabolites, though they are not important for their therapeutic effects. There is only one exception, that metabolite of thioridazine is basically called mesoridazine, which is more potent than its parent compound. Otherwise, you do not have to think much about the active metabolites. They are excreted almost completely, and elimination half-life is around 10 to 24 hours. The example of phenothiazines are allopathic, the piperidine and the piperazines. The chlorpromazine, thioridazine, flufenazine, triflupromazine, these are all examples of these group of drugs. If you place it in the curve and see the effect, that means dose response curve, and if you see the potency, the effect, you can clearly say that piperazine is probably the most potent one, but their efficacies are almost similar. Whether it's a aliphatic one or a piperidine one or a piperazine one, whatever may be the group, efficacy is almost the same, but the most potent one, that means lesser drug dose is required for piperazine group of antipsychotic agents. Thioxanthines are closely related to phenothiazines. The examples are thiazines and chlorprothiazine, and these drugs are not used in that sense in present day practice because of the invention of newer drugs like olanzapine, then the drug like quetiapine, risperidone. So these are the newer drugs. They are coming up even after the invention of clozapine. So these are only for your bookish knowledge, or just for knowing this aspect of that these drugs are still existing for the treatment of schizophrenia or any psychotic disorders. The butyrylphenols are obviously used. These haloperidol and droperidol, these are very useful drugs in case of acute schizophrenia, so or acute psychotic disorders. And the chance of having a rabbit syndrome or extrapyramidal disorder is most with this kind of preparations. As they are having the most potent action, they are also showing the risk of this extrapyramidal syndrome. And once you compare these drugs, you see the most potent one is the butyrophenons. Though the efficacy is similar in case of butyrophenons, phenothiazines and thiazanthines, but lesser dose required means the chance of toxicity may be lesser in comparison to the other ones. Newer drugs, they are having affinity for serotonin and alpha receptors and also D1 receptor. Norepinephrine, GABA, glycine, glutamate, they also have been implicated in schizophrenia. So basically it's a complex mechanism. To keep it simple, we always concentrate on dopamine, D2 receptor. D2 receptor blockers are the classical ones, showing mostly the extrapyramidal syndrome, and the newer ones, which are primarily on the serotonergic receptor 5-HT22 and little bit of alpha 1 and H1 action. The drugs like clozapine, olanzapine, risperidone, these are the common examples, and these drugs are showing effect primarily on the negative schizophrenic patients or patients with negative symptoms, and in case of resistant patients, and those are having lesser side effects, lesser adverse drug reactions, since we are using it in the clinical practice. The acute effects of antipsychotics do not explain why their therapeutic effects are not evident until 4 to 8 weeks of treatment. The blockage of D2 receptor will give you the short-term compensatory effects like probably firing rate and activity of nigrostriatal and mesolimbic neurons, and dopamine synthesis probably more, and metabolism is probably going to be more. But it's very difficult to explain that why are we not getting the effect of antipsychotics at the very early stage. So at the presynaptic level, if you block D2 receptor, the compensatory effect is firing rate and the activity of nigrostriatal and mesolimbic dopamine neurons increase in dopamine synthesis. Whereas in the postsynaptic level, whatever maybe the dopamine is synthesized, you are blocking the end receptors. So depolarization is blockage, inactivation of nigrostriatal and mesolimbic dopamine neurons, but sometimes it may lead to receptor supersensitivity, and which may be responsible for not getting the adequate effect of the classical antipsychotic or neuroleptic drug. So these are the list of newer neuroleptic drugs: pimozide, molindone, loxapine, clozapine, olanzapine, quetiapine, risperidone. So out of these, mostly in the clinical practice, we are using the drugs like clozapine, we are using the drugs like olanzapine, quetiapine and risperidone. Mostly we are using these four. Beside this, there is one drug called aripiprazole, which is not mentioned here. That is also a newer agent and is reported to have a novel mechanism of action. It does not block this dopamine receptor. It's a partial agonist of D2 as well as 5-HT1A, while as it will antagonize 5-HT2A receptor. It is vaguely referred to as DA 5-HT stabilizer in CNS. So that drug is aripiprazole, and it is not yet clear whether it stabilizes the high affinity form or the low affinity form of dopamine receptor. The risk of this extrapyramidal syndrome, such as acute dystonic reactions, tardive dyskinesia, are very low, and in some trials equal to placebo. However, it may be associated with one syndrome called neuroleptic malignant syndrome. We'll come to it later. So these are the comparative studies between the drugs, where you will see the potency, toxicity in terms of sedation, hypotension, and you will see in case of haloperidol, it's highly potent, toxicity is going to be higher, sedative effect is also higher. So that should be used in acute psychotic stage, this drug haloperidol. Whereas you see olanzapine, the last from the second one from the last, and here you see the potency is high but its toxicity is low, and it is available in the oral form. So even in acute cases or post-spiral psychosis, we are using olanzapine nowadays wherever it's possible to give oral form, and in case of injectable form we are always using haloperidol. So this is the drugs which are actually commonly used in clinical practice, and here it's been shown how the action of different drugs are varying from receptor to receptor. So these are the common receptors which are involved, and this relative affinity towards different receptors are changed. As these are being changed, you see the clozapine and risperidone, they probably have a different kind of action, though they are being active on the same thing. I mean, they are the drug of choice in case of same disease, but in different situations. And here you see that clozapine and risperidone are absolutely acting differently, or their relative sensitivity towards the receptor blocking is different from that of haloperidol and chlorpromazine, which are the classical neuroleptic or antipsychotic agents. The clinical problems which we are facing while giving these antipsychotic drugs, first thing is failure to control negative effect, which is usually nowadays done by the drugs like your clozapine and risperidone. So these drugs are commonly used. The significant toxicity which we are observing is the Parkinson-like syndrome, the tardive dyskinesia, the autonomic effects, the drug-induced Parkinsonism, the endocrine effects like release of prolactin, the cardiac effects, its action on the muscarinic and the alpha-1 receptors was probably, and the beta receptors probably responsible for this. So cardiac arrhythmia is very common, and these are also related to poor concentration. So this is the nigrostrial pathway. Here you see on this side the substantia nigra, from where this going to corpus striatum, and here lies the acetylcholine neuron. The GABA neuron is also present, and inhibition of motor activity is happening because this one is probably having, the drugs are probably having effect on both. And here you see the GABA neuron, which is basically connecting this pathway. So many pathways are connecting these substantia nigra and corpus striatum. One is the GABA neuron, another one is the dopaminergic neuron, and these are being interconnected with GABA neuron. Many of them are showing the muscarinic side effects like the dry mouth, blood visions, urinary retention, constipation. Obviously, these are the problem of muscarinic receptor blockage. So those are having action on, these drugs are having action on the muscarinic receptors, especially the drugs like olanzapine and clozapine. The drugs which are having action on alpha adrenergic receptor will show orthostatic hypotension, and that has been seen with chlorpromazine and thioreutazine. Chlorpromazine is one drug which is also used in intractable hiccup, other than this use in its use in antipsychotic drug. Also, this drug chlorpromazine can be used as anti-emetic drug. Because the activities are same, they are blocking the dopaminergic receptors. That means the D2 receptor. And the chance of sedation is higher with risperidone and haloperidol because of their activity against the H1 receptors. In lactotropes, in pituitary, if there is a blockage of D2 receptor, it will lead to concentration of prolactin, and it may produce breast engorgement and galacturia. There is one kind of syndrome that is called neuroleptic malignant syndrome, which is very rare, but it's a serious side effect, and it proves to be lethal. And here your drug of choice to treat this case is dantrolene sodium, which is a directly acting muscle relaxant. It occurs in patients hypertensive to extrapyramidal effects of antipsychotics. It may be due to rapidly blockage of excessive postsynaptic dopamine receptors may be responsible for this. It begins with muscle rigidity, marked muscle rigidity, sweating is impaired, fever may ensue, and the autonomic instability, the increase in the creatine kinase level, isoenzymes are elevated. So basically these patients are probably having prone to this kind of syndrome, and it's a life-threatening one. And as I said, the treatment of choice is directly muscle relaxant, direct acting muscle relaxant, that is dantrolene sodium. Usually in the injectable form, it blocks the calcium channel. So other than dantrolene, you can use diazepam and bromocriptine. It will help you a little bit, and you can use some kind of anti-Parkinsonian drug, but ultimately your life-saving drug is going to be dantrolene sodium. These antipsychotics have different drug interactions. It has additive effects with sedative. That means the sedative effect will be potentiated. It will cause dry mouth, retention of urine, and all these things. So if you prescribe it with anticholinergics, again there will be a problem for the patient. If you prescribe it in allergic patients who are probably taking antihistaminics, again the patient is having problem because it is showing additive effect. If you are giving it with the alpha blocking agent like Brazosine or some other drug to tackle hypertension with schizophrenia or psychotic disorders, then the chance of syncope or hypotension is more, and chance of arrhythmia is definitely more if you are prescribing in a cardiac patients who is already on antiarrhythmic drugs. So to summarize, you just look at this. These are the different drugs, the propylamine, the piperidine, and the piperazine. Out of these, you take one example for this, and their effect. Chlorpromazine is very sedative, moderate, anticholinergic, and having extrapyramidal effect. The piperazine, like thyroidazine, moderately sedative, very anticholinergic, and fewer extrapyramidal effect. Piperazine is probably having less sedative, less anticholinergic effect in comparison to the others. Where you come to the atypical drugs, the clozapine, risperidone, olanzapine, these drugs are commonly prescribed nowadays due to its lesser adverse drug reactions. Now look at the right hand side of the aspect, the psychological effects, the antipsychotic, the impaired performance, sedations. It is basically related to cortex and limbic system, the mesolimbic system, the D2, that is the dopamine receptor blockage, the nigrostriatal, that is the basal ganglia. From there you see the tuberoinfundibular, which is ultimately affecting the pituitary gland, and increase in prolactin is responsible for this. So the endocrine effects may show the galacturia, gynecomastia, weight gain, and there may be different movement disorders like as I mentioned before, the Parkinsonism, that is the drug-induced Parkinsonism, akathisia, dystonia, dyskinesia, and tardive dyskinesia. Now, if all these things happen, these adverse drug reactions happen, starting from these akathisia, drug-induced Parkinsonism, dystonia, rabbit syndrome, that is perioral tremor. How will you treat these cases? These are the important aspects, because these extrapyramidal symptoms are characteristic of most of the classical antipsychotic drugs. So, let us start with the first one, dystonia. It is characterized by spasm of muscles of tongue, face, neck and back. Mechanism is not known. Treatment may be given by using antihistaminic and anticholinergic drug like diphenhydramine, promethazine. Akathisia, which is characterized by uncontrollable motor restlessness without any involvement of anxiety. So, mechanism is again not clear. The use of a non-selective beta blocker such as propranolol or drugs like diphenhydramine will give you relief. Drug-induced Parkinsonism. It results due to disturbance in the dopaminergic and acetylcholine balance, as you know, in the level of basal ganglia because of D2 receptor blockage. So, as a result, cholinergic influence dominates over dopaminergic system, leading to Parkinson-like syndrome. So, in that case, the treatment can be restored by giving, as you all know, the centrally acting antimuscarinic drug, that is the atropine substitute, and it is being taught in your prescription classes as well as in your therapeutic problem classes, the drugs like trihexyphenidyl, benjhexol. So, these are your drug of choice in case of drug-induced Parkinsonism. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome already you have discussed, and your ideal treatment of choice is dantrolene sodium, though you can use drug like diazepam. And the commonest culprit for this neuroleptic malignant syndrome is drug like haloperidol or flufenazine. Perioral tremor or rabbit-like syndrome or rabbit syndrome is a rare disorder, may occur after long-term use of a potent classical neuroleptic and is characterized by rapid chewing movement made by the patients akin to those made by rabbits. These respond with anticholinergic and anti-Parkinsonism drugs. So, in this case again there is no such treatment available, but the drugs which are being used previously may be useful sometimes, like diphenhydramine, but most of the times this is not being controlled with any drug. And last one is the tardive dyskinesia. This is the late occurring syndrome characterized by involuntary orobuccal lingual dyskinesia. It has been proposed that to counteract a long-term dopamine receptor blockage by a neuroleptic, the striatal nerve cells synthesize newer dopamine receptors which are supersensitive to even small amount of dopamine. So, when dopaminergic activity is increased due to supersensitivity of dopamine receptors in the striatum, there is a decrease in the cholinergic activity with an ultimate decrease in GABA release, that means release of gamma amino butyric acid synthesis. This decreased release of inhibitory neurotransmitter ends up in the increase in involuntary motor activity. Now, with this background in your mind as a pathogenesis, three pharmacological approaches could have been done to manage this case, to decrease the dopaminergic overactivity. This can be done by raising the dose of neuroleptic itself, but it may not help as a neuroleptic. To increase cholinergic activity, to start with, all the anti-Parkinsonian drug, anticholinergic drugs should be withdrawn at once. Thereafter, the choline or lecithin can be used, but the doses required are very high and the success rate is poor. To increase the GABA activity along with neuroleptic holidays, it is now logically accepted that for the management of tardive dyskinesia, the initial step should be to withdraw the neuroleptic as well as anti-Parkinsonian anticholinergic drug if being used along with neuroleptic. So, withdraw the drugs. These two steps called neuroleptic holidays. These are sufficient enough to bring the improvement within 15 days. If they do not, then you may add diazepam and enhance GABAergic activity. The substitution of an atypical neuroleptic such as clozapine or olanzapine might have been another option. But you never know that whether these measures will ultimately be able to tackle a case of tardive dyskinesia or not. So, thank you so much for your patient hearing, and this is probably the last lecture for this year, and wish you all the best for your examination. Thank you once again.